In this tutorial for the TI-Nspire CX, we'll look at the maths functions. So, press the on button to get the home screen back up. Go into option A for calculate. In here, to get any of the maths functions in, the button we're going to use is menu. If you go to menu, it brings up all the different possible options that you might want. You can ignore actions pretty much for the time being. If you look at option 2, for example, you've got convert depth, you've got all the various number options. Option 3, we've got some options to solve systems of linear equations, polynomial tools. Again, that's just for solving polynomials. We'll look at that in another tutorial. A few calculus options, probability options, which we'll come back to in a short while, a few statistics options and so on. So, for example, let's say that we wanted to work out a combination, choosing this one because it's one of the more awkward functions. It's only more awkward in that it doesn't show in the format that you necessarily would write it in. It would write it as NCR and then open some brackets because you're going to enter it as if it was a computer function. So you need to put the inputs in separated by commas. So for example, if you wanted to do 7C2, you do 7 and a comma 2. That'll work it out for you. Now if you can't find them easily in the menu, another way that you can find any of the functions at all is if you go into the catalogue. And the catalogue is here. It looks like a book. Press that button and it brings up a long list of all of the possible functions which are in the calculator. Use the arrow key to get between them all. Obviously this is quite a lengthy procedure. The quicker way of getting to functions that you want is by pressing the first letter of that particular function, if you know what it starts with. So for example, summation, starts with S, so you can press S, that'll take you to all of the S's, and look down until you can find the function that you want. There we go. So we've got a sigma symbol there. Turning the wizards on is quite useful because some of them have more than one input, and the wizard may well tell you how to enter that. You can use the tab key to get to that option. If you press it twice, you get to wizards on. Press enter to select it. Press tab twice again, and it will get you back into there. Select enter, and it brings it up. This one doesn't have a wizard, so it doesn't show you a wizard after you've selected it. Another useful button is the expressions template, which is just next to the catalogue. Press that one, and you get a template of all your possible mathematical expressions. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. Finally, two more options. Let's do that one. So if we're going to do a calculation which could have a fraction or a decimal answer, so 8 divided by 7, it will default to the fraction answer. An option is to do 8 divided by 7 and then do Control Enter, and it will give you the decimal answer instead. So it's quite a useful feature. Another useful feature is using var. If I press var at the moment, nothing comes up. If I go into the graphs, use this button as a shortcut and enter a function. So for example, simple function x plus 1. Let's move back to the scratch pad. If I now press var, it offers me a list of all of the functions which I've entered here under the graph. If I choose f1 and then say I want to know what's the value of f1 when x equals 5, I can just write it as f1 bracket 5 and then it will work it out for me. In case it isn't obvious, there are several of the more common functions over here at left of the buttons. For example, if you go into trig, you can then choose any of these options. So, for example, tan of 2, and that's working in radians, so we end up with a negative answer. Up here, to change this into degrees, you could use the mouse, so you could scroll and then click here and then go into the document settings and then change the angle, again using the mouse. The only option in this scratch pad is to make it default. This also makes it default in any new documents which you then set up. So if you change to degrees in the scratch pad, then if you create a new document, that will also come up as degrees. Alright, cancel out of this. It's also possible to get into those document settings using one of these menu items. There we go, it's under document, and then I think it's settings and status, and then you can get to the document settings there, and that's one way of changing it into changing the angles, and obviously there's several other settings which you can change there as well. Lastly, a very tidy way of getting these functions is simply to type them, especially if you're using the emulator software rather than the handheld, because you can just use your keyboard. So, for example, if I wanted to get in, let's do NCR again. We'll do 7C2, so if you remember that was NCR 7,2. Press enter and it automatically converts it into NCR, or typing using a keyboard. Let's use the same one, 10.2. Press enter and we end up with exactly the same calculation. So typing it in using the keyboard can speed things up quite a lot.